All right, Clay, so we broke down some of the moves. Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, and we bring in a guy that knows plenty about the Dolphins. That's Jason Leeser, who covers the Dolphins for the Palm Beach Post, kind of to join us here on Sports Sunday. Jason, let's talk about the culture. You know, we talk so much about the players, and we can get into specific guys, but you're around that locker room a lot. You wrote recently that culture wasn't really the issue. Tell us why you believe culture really wasn't the factor in a lot of these moves that have been made with star players.
Well, Will and Clay, it's funny how culture changes based on whether you win or lose, because it's the same culture essentially they had in 2016 that everyone was praising when they went 10-6. Then you go 6-10, and all of a sudden the culture's a problem. When you look at some of the guys they've gotten rid of, they've traded Jarvis Landry, they cut Lawrence Timmons, which was expected. They cut Ndamukong Suh. None of those three guys have been culture problems, in my opinion. Those are all guys that they've praised, especially back in 2016 when things were going well. And when you look at some of the things that were said by Adam Gase and some of their teammates last year, and just some of the ways those guys acted and played, those three guys are not part of a culture problem. The whole culture issue with the Dolphins, I think, has been very overblown.
So obviously these moves, in addition to the play on the field, you got to plug the holes elsewhere. And so I get it. You got to spend that money elsewhere. But how do you replace someone like Jarvis Landry? Because this is a team that needed not just the production on the field, but they like that edge, that attitude. Now, all of a sudden, if that's a culture problem, then I don't know what direction this team is going. So twofold, how do you replace someone like Landry both on the field and then also in the locker room?
I don't think they are going to be able to replace Jarvis Landry, at least not this year. Clay, when you talk about this guy having the best first 4 seasons, the most productive first 4 seasons of an NFL career, those guys don't exactly grow on trees. Not only were his statistics good, not only did he get a bunch of yards, 1,000 yards, 100 catches on average every year, this was a guy that was the security blanket for whoever was playing quarterback. When that pocket turned into an emergency situation for Ryan Tannehill or Jay Cutler or Matt Moore or whoever, Jarvis Landry's the guy they look for. And if you guys have watched any Dolphins games, you know that the pocket is pretty much always an emergency situation for them. So to take away that security blanket, especially now you look at a team that doesn't have one of those you know, third down conversion tight ends that is, you know, a fad that's sweeping the league right now, but the Dolphins haven't caught on to it yet. I mean, that's going to be a tough guy to replace. I think there's going to be a lot more punting with Jarvis Landry gone, and I think you're also taking away the guy who was not only their best red zone player last year in a year where they didn't have a good tight end, a viable threat at tight end down there, but Jarvis Landry was one of the best red zone players in the entire league last season.
Yeah, I think people lose sight of that because they look at the yards per catch and they get caught up in that, which granted wasn't that good, but he did a lot of other good things. That maybe you pick the one negative and make it the fault of the player. It's kind of silly. Now, let's get to the quarterback situation, Jason, because I think everybody's looking at this offseason big picture. We talked Ryan Tannehill a moment ago. Okay, Ryan Tannehill's the lone survivor here. You know, he's the guy who didn't play last year, and he's the guy that this front office and this coaching staff is putting all its faith into it. Is that a mistake, or do you think this is the direction the Dolphins all along have thought, hey, he's our guy, we're going to ride him?
I don't know that it's either, Will. I don't think they have any other choice. I mean, they don't have another guy on the roster right now that you would pick over Tannehill. This was kind of the problem that happened last year. Ryan Tannehill gets hurt in training camp. There's nobody behind him other than Matt Moore, and they clearly didn't feel comfortable going into the 2017 season with Matt Moore as their starting quarterback. So they shell out $10 million to lure Jay Cutler out of retirement, which I admit I thought was a very logical decision at the time.
I agree.
It is clearly backfired. So I was wrong about it, but I'm wrong with them. I mean, that was very regrettable. The $10 million cost you as far as you could have rolled that money over into this year and had a little more flexibility, maybe to keep some guys, maybe to make a good signing. And you get to the end of the year where they're going into that final meaningless game against Buffalo. It kind of seems like Jay Cutler's not really going to play. And you'd have been so excited if they had some second-round pick sitting on the bench that were like, oh, let's find out what this guy can do. But instead, all they have is David Fales, who's 27 years old. He's already bounced around the league a little bit in his career. He's in line now to be their backup this season. I mean, you need to get younger and better at that position right now.
And Jason, you were around this team in the lead up the last few weeks a little bit. You checked out these quarterbacks that are coming up in the draft, and you wrote a nice piece on it on the Palm Beach Post. But just quickly, your thoughts on these quarterbacks, and do you feel like part of the decision with Tannehill is that the Dolphins are seeing all of these teams race up to get these quarterbacks, and now they may have no choice?
Well, Clay, you've really hit on an important storyline that's transpired for the Dolphins over the last week. It doesn't really matter which one of these 4 quarterbacks they like because they're not going to get one, it doesn't look like. You see now that the Jets have traded up into, I believe, the 3 spot. They traded with the Colts. So now you figure those top 4 quarterbacks are looking like they're going to go in the first 5 picks. And the only way the Dolphins get into that game is if they try to trade up from 11 to maybe Cleveland's pick at 4, and that's not going to happen. Yeah. I mean, the price that the Jets paid was 3 second-round picks just to move up from 6 to 3. And it, by the way, a genius trade for the Colts, because I think they were probably going to take defensive end Bradley Chubb at 3, and with everyone else taking quarterbacks, he's still going to be there at 6, and they get 3 second-round picks to go with it. But the bottom line now for the Dolphins at quarterback is they need one in this draft, and they're not going to be able to get one of those top 4. So now they've got to start looking at, can they trade back and take a second-tier quarterback at the end of the first round? Could they trade up in the second round, maybe from 42 up into the maybe early 30s and get someone like Lamar Jackson or Mason Rudolph, Luke Falk? If you don't believe in those guys, then I don't know how much sense it makes to do that. But they have got to get some promising young quarterback in the building, not just to be Ryan Tannehill's backup this year, but Ryan Tannehill's only signed for 3 more seasons. That's perfect timing to draft someone, bring them in, see what they've got, and best case scenario, you end up with a good Ryan Tannehill in 3 years and a good draft pick that you've developed, and you trade one of them. They're a trade asset.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's all good information about Jason Lisa. You could always get it via the Palm Beach Post, via his Twitter as well. Jason, such a good topic. The Dolphins are never endless on topics that we got you on the podcast this week, so you can listen to Jason, me, and Clay. We'll be chatting on the podcast over at local10.com. But thanks for your time, Jason. We always look forward to your updates from Dolphins camp.
Thank you, guys.